So where are you right now?
Playa Negra. I'm home.
Awesome. And how, without giving any secrets away, how do the waves around you handle all this big swell we've been having?
Dude, it's been massive. It's been nonstop. It's been fun. The thing is, up north, Guanacaste doesn't do our Costa Rican winter very well. Wind tends to switch, super choppy. So during this time of year, I like heading south more than hanging out at home.
Yeah. And I've seen you all over the place. I follow you on social media. It seems like you've been getting some good waves elsewhere.
See, it's been fun. It's been nonstop, like I said. See, super.
I recently, well, I guess it's been a year and a half now. I moved to Uvita, which doesn't have great waves this time of year either. It's really nice in the dry season, but this time of year it's just all beach break, so it's pretty closed out. And so I've been like just mom life and just taking like strike mission trips down to get waves at the point breaks when I get a chance. But so I almost have to like not look at social media because there's been so much good surf that it's like almost a little bit painful. Like I was looking at some friends today surfing really good waves, and I'm like, I'm not gonna look at that. It's gonna be in the moment, present moment.
Qué bueno. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before connecting, I was looking at your website, and I mean, I knew you were a badass. I already knew that you were a badass and that you surfed very well, but like, I was definitely blown away by all of the things that you've done. Like the backside tube riding, I was like, what? I've only ever seen you, I think, go left or maybe like surf a right point break. So that was sick. Awesome. Well, I guess I like to do these podcasts by hearing a little bit of story. So can you share where you grew up and how you got into surfing? Because it seems like maybe it was kind of a different path than a lot of other women at your age.
Bueno, I back in the day talking about surfing in Costa Rica was it didn't exist, right? So I used to be a competitive swimmer, a good one, and I was part of the national team, and I actually gave the times to the Atlanta Olympics, but somehow I wasn't happy with the team, and like my parents would go in vacations and I wasn't allowed. So one day, instead of walking to the swimming pool, because I used to walk from my school in San Jose, I walked into trouble. And then so I decided, since I never had vacations by myself because I wasn't allowed, I decided I wanted to volunteer in a national park, and that was Playa Grande. I chose one park that had surf. I had only surfed once before that, and I've been on the beach ever since. This is 1996, could be.
Amazing. So how did you that one time when you went surfing, like growing up in the city in San Jose, like would your family take trips to the beach? Because I know San Jose, like maybe people who haven't been to Costa Rica, they just imagine that everything is beach, right? But San Jose is not actually that close to the beach.
Yes, no, it was actually American friends that were staying at my parents' guest house, and they had, I still remember, blue and green wave riding vehicle 5.6. And I took it out, and I had the upper body strength, the paddle strength. And on my first day, I was catching waves, and I remember telling my brother, dude, I don't want to do anything but surf for the rest of my life. So for a long time, I thought surfing saved my life and at the same time ruined my life when I became a mother, a single mother, and all of a sudden, raising kids here is not that easy. So it put into into perspective. I think when I had kids was the first time I actually felt like a woman. I thought, I figured that if it was me now, they'd probably be giving me, changing, but and it was a difficult time. It was a very I wasn't smart about my baby daddies, and I was wrapped up in a very awful situation in domestic violence abuse. And for me, it was really hard to understand that me with my personality and me charging the big waves and doing this, I'm all of a sudden allowing this to happen in my life.
I'm so glad you spoke into that because I think that a lot of times people think, oh, I'm strong and I'm dependent and that couldn't happen to me. And it's important to recognize that you can find yourself in that situation, even being a strong, independent woman.
Yes, imagine it still brings tears to my eyes. but it was a path, and it definitely made me find out who I was and what I was made of, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I'm happily still a single mom of three, and they're the best thing that have happened in my life. And yeah, so I've been, in the industry and out and about since, I was, what was it that I left? I was, I believe, turning 19 when I left San Jose and moved by myself to Tamarindo at a friend's house. We would work and for food and a place to stay, and yeah, and then it was, life at the beach, and I've seen everything that has happened to Costa Rica in the last 30 plus years.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to hear your perspective and how that's changed. But I noticed that you were sponsored by Roxy. Like, was there a time where you thought like I could be a professional surfer?
Yes, of course. And I remember I moved with Gilbert Brown, Brooks Wilson, Lisbeth Vindas, Naranjo, and myself. We moved to California, and I could, if I could buy myself a car, and I was surfing for Roxy, and I had my surfing sponsors, and it was amazing. We were living the dream, and then 9/11 happened, and we all got scared, and we were like, "This is not our war." um, you know, we were staying in San Clemente, so it felt very close for us, and we left everybody that was there pursuing their surfing career at the time. We left the States and we came back home.
Wow, that's so interesting. Okay, and then coming back, then what happened? What were you thinking?
Then I kept on, but looking back, I always wonder what it would have been with my surfing career and me as a professional if I would have stayed. Then I came back, and then life in the jungle, and all of a sudden, this is home. Time flies.
And
Yes.
at what point did you start your business?
Bueno, since forever. I've been doing this as far as I can remember. Um, I remember one of my favorite swimming coaches gave me, I think, one of the best tools in life to be very, very aware of mindset and the sensibility it requires when you're teaching people how to surf. So I honestly love my job, and I've been doing this ever since, I started working when I moved to the beach to provide for myself. So um, I'm happy to say that despite of not really having a good industry, we were sponsored by Main Team in the US. Now, when our kids look for sponsorship in with surfing brands, they don't even exist because our budget for Latin America is so small that our athletes are not being financially supported by surfing industries per se.
Well, when you first moved back to Costa Rica in 9/11, that was 2001, right? So you would have been 21, 22. And at that point, when you started teaching surf lessons, what was the reaction to the men? Because I mean, you tell me, but my interpretation of Costa Rican culture is so machismo, and especially, that surfing and culture in general, especially in that era, was very machismo. So how did the men respond to you trying to teach surfing alongside them?
Bueno, to be honest, I've never had a problem with Costa Ricans. Costa Ricans are always super welcoming. They love watching a girl in the water, and never, ever in my whole career, maybe once recently in Matapalo, but I think this person, whatever, pero never, ever
Wow.
with a ever. The one person that gave me shit that he's still my friend, he's French. Yeah. So
Classic.
what is a girl doing paddling out? And the one thing I love of surfing is it's all a meritocracy. Um, it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, as long as you can paddle and you send it, you get the respect. This is what I tell everybody. The send it not necessarily has to be that I freaking scored a barrel. I went for it and I charged, and that will get me the respect on the lineup. So I've never felt that I've been put away by men because I paddle out. Never, to be honest, had that problem because my surfing has always represented. And so I stand my ground in the water. I don't think I'm the most stylish surfer because I started older, but I dominated the lineup because I was the fastest paddler out there. So for me, no beef. Never. It doesn't matter if we surfed. I remember surfing Hermosa, huge because I lived there for a while too, and I was the only girl out there, and they would always welcome me, never have problems. Yeah.
That's awesome. I thank you for changing my perspective because my thought had been, well, I know that surfing is like that. I mean, my experience learning to surf, the men were not friendly at all. So that's nice to hear that the culture that you grew up in, it wasn't that way.
See, no, it was, I felt welcome since day number one. And my best friends were Hilbert and Nino. That's who I started the first surf school I had. And I would always paddle, and I was just one of the boys. I never found myself to be, I did not surf on a G string. Back in the day, that was not a thing. Like I
Right.
said, we were tomboyish, and all the girls paddling out were wearing their surf trunks. Or I remember my Gilbert Brown telling me, "Hey, take your diaper away," because the rocks were super big compared to what the girls are surfing nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So surfing, I think it's one of those spaces that you can be you, and as long as you charge and doing the right thing, not endangering anybody else's life, you will always be welcomed.
Yeah. And how you have three kids, and Leah where is she in the line? Older or younger?
Yeah, is the oldest, and she's heading your way right now to
Oh,
Dominique. Yes, she's
epic.
Sam's girlfriend.
Ah, yes, I saw that. That's so cool. What do you think of her having a surfer boyfriend?
Bueno, my girls, because they were raised by a super strong, always in the masculine woman, they've been very, very, well behaved, in the sense that they don't, they understand what is respecting themselves. And I think that was the biggest decision when I decided to walk out of my marriage, was not showing my kids that that was love, and that nobody deserves to be treated that way. And when you're gonna make that decision, it feels like so scary, like you're never gonna be able to make it on your own. How are you gonna go to work? Who's gonna look after the kids? And then this is the one reason why it's so hard for women to walk out. But I was like, fuck it. If God gave me this, is because he knows I'm strong enough. And so I say surfing ruined and saved my life, depending ages of my life. Coming to God was definitely a second thing that changed my life.
And how old were you when that happened?
Tamarindo, I was like struggling, not understanding how I could be so vulnerable as a woman. I wasn't ready to become a mom for a third time by myself. And I speak about it because I want always to know, women in life, everything is figure outable. Everything, everything in life is short, life is beautiful, and we need to become our own heroes and empower ourselves, and create our lives, not be a victim of our lives, which is something that what is happening with our country right now. It's like, if we want to be part of the change, we need to start taking action and becoming leaders in our community and hold those spaces, because nobody's going to come to save us. It's in our hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was so stoked when you reached out and wanted to share that story. I know there's been things that have happened up where you are as well. Do you want to talk about what you mean when you say what's happening in your country?
I've honestly been seeing this happen for 20 years or more. I remember when I had just moved into Tamarindo, where the people that couldn't afford paying the proper lawyer lost their homes, and homes were demolished, and then 10, 15 years later, they were given to lease to foreigners. I have no problem with foreigners. I find that it's about finding a balance. And if you're moving to our community, is assimilate to our community. You move to Costa Rica for one reason. If you're leaving your country, it's because you're not liking it. Don't bring the same bad vibe. So right now, I'm seeing this happen with way more speed and out of control, where we've lost everything. Pavones was our Pavones, and maybe across the bay. If I say it, people get offended. It's happening everywhere, and I've been living from tourism and with foreigners, with the surfing culture, because some people want to blame the industry, or some people want to blame the expats, or some people want to blame gentrification, or whatever the word is. It's us. It's a thing of the heart. It's not. It's a thing of the heart, because if the person that decided they were gonna do something about it came into politics, and now he's a new president and his heart is corrupt, he's gonna be a corrupt leader. He forgot who he was fighting for. The point I was making is I I'm not against tourism. I'm not against development. I'm not against about moving or having people move to our country, because it works both ways. We migrated. I migrated at a part of my life, and who cares? We just want no assholes moving down. And if you're a developer coming to my land, for me, that you're building and destroying what made Costa Rica so special is just having lack of long-term vision, because we are starting to become something nobody wants to come anymore.
All right, amigas, you know we love supporting small woman-owned businesses that make high-quality surf gear. Well, we've got another recommendation for you. Mamala Wetsuits is the only woman-founded and designed wetsuit brand in the entire industry. I first found out about Mamala when the founder joined us on a retreat. I was immediately in love with the mermaid shark logo and super impressed with the quality of the materials and cut of the suits. Our team has been testing them at our cold water retreats like Morocco and Peru, and absolutely love how buttery soft they are, and that the shape of the suits are so obviously made for women's bodies. If you need a new suit, head over to mamalasurf.com and enter code SWA20 at checkout for 20% off. Again, that's MAMALA surf.com, and the code is SWA20 at checkout. You're going to be stoked on a super high quality, brand new suit, and you can't beat the 20% discount.
We were unique in the sense that we had the happiest people in the world. We were unique to the sense that we protected more than 30% of our lands. And one person I talked to this, did you know that a bunch of national parks were donated by expats, by foreigners that saw what we had and handed it to us to look after, to be good ambassadors of this heritage. And this is how I'm feeling. It's like it's so much more complex than just being displaced. It's just everything. We're rotting as a society, but this is not exclusive to Costa Rica. This is a worldwide thing, and it's happening everywhere. And now we are destroying the little havens we have, and we're going to understand that there's nowhere to run.
It's super sad, and I appreciate hearing your voice as a local person who has, like you said, has the perspective of like living in another country. And it's not that you're against foreigners, because I think sometimes it can feel like like it's like local versus foreigners. And I think you're right that those of us that are foreigners that come here to Costa Rica, it's because we love what is here. And it's hard to find that balance of like, I know that I'm part of the problem by me as a foreigner coming to Costa Rica and buying a piece of property that I'm driving the cost up for another family, a local family. Like I recognize that, and I also love this place and want to support and want to do the right thing. It's like so easy to be like, well, it's okay for me, but like nobody else can come. And so it's like trying to find that middle ground. And so it's really important to have your voice heard. And how do you, like, do you have any ideas on how like people like me, like foreigners that want to come because they love Costa Rica, because they think the people are beautiful, the environment is beautiful, the waves are beautiful, and want to be mindful about doing it in the right way or like as good as possible?
The best way is that your kids really end up being ticos if you're living here, and that you become from the country. That we're fighting on equal levels. That means that I'm known for my honesty. Yeah? I know we both run women retreats, and I know how hard it is to find local surf instructors, especially female, but they're out there. And you need to prioritize them, and that's where you start competing in equal grounds as me. And hiring locals is a nightmare, but this is the land of the locals. So we need to learn to work with them. And then you can also become part of the solution. How do I empower younger women to become surf coaches? And that way I'm not bringing women anymore. And then, I don't know, like in Nosara, Surf Simply, they'll host people and do internships, and then, oh, you're going to be the photographer. You're going to be working from my photographer, and so on, just an example.
Yeah, that's good advice, and I appreciate your honesty. And I know that it putting the pressure on does work, because I think that we have for a long time said yes, we want to hire locals, and we do. We have lots of locals on our team, but our surf instructors are one where we have been slower to add Costa Ricans. This year, we've done a big push, partly from the pressure from surfistas locales. And I think you're right that once you start looking closer, that we have found more women, primarily in the Guanacaste area. There's more up there. Yeah. Getting back to like your story and your experience, like how old are the younger ones and do they surf?
Leah is my oldest, and then is Sol, 2 years behind Leah, and Kai 3 years behind, 4 years. I don't know how many years.
Hard to keep track.
But Leah was the only one that fell in love with the competition side of it. So yeah, so she's been pursuing her surfing journey. All I want for my children is to be happy, and that they assume the consequences of their decisions. So I'll empower them. And right now she finally scored a proper sponsor, and so now she's just traveling and surfing, living the
Awesome.
dream.
And you let promote her sponsor. Who's sponsoring her?
Surf Simply.
Oh yeah, I saw that actually. I saw that on their website. I thought that was interesting. I saw that because at first I was like, wait, but they're not like, it's not that they hired her, but they're like contributing to like her traveling and competing. That's so awesome.
She actually walked for a job interview, and they had already filled out the space, but the conversation led from one place to another, and immediately that day they're like, okay, we'd like to sponsor you.
That's
So
epic.
see, so Surf Simply is another case, of I applied for them. They didn't want to give me a job. I think at the time, the one question they did to me that I kind of read faces, and I understand. I do no judgment. I understand. Was like, how are you going to come to work having 3 kids, right? And ask, can I bring my kids to work? Because that's they were, anybody who's ever surfed with me, my kids have always been around me. So I'm pushing people, and They either float or buddy surf or surf, whatever they want to do. So I think they didn't like that I asked that question, and so I could have had a grudge. Again, I love them. I think they do an amazing job. When I look for professional role models like you guys, you know that you do amazing jobs, and so thank God they're here. They make us step up on our game and become better at what we do. So yeah, I'm just the point I'm trying to make is let's kill each other with love and kindness. What's the point of fighting over waves or over land or demolishing other people's houses just because I'm an asshole? Makes no sense.
Yeah, I love the image of you having your kids around you because that's it's owned by two women that have kids. So you will see if you come on a retreat, my kids. But I think it's beautiful that in our industry that we can be moms that bring our kids to work and that the kids are there hanging out and learning, and then we can also like do our thing, and it's a special thing for everybody, and even for the clients. Like I have clients that are like, wow, that's so cool, like I wish I could bring my daughter to work with me, but fortunately it's not this environment. So getting back to like the development stuff, like what can we do? Like what are you feeling like the community? Because I was, been thinking about it, and I was actually talked to Tara Ruttenberg. We did a podcast on this topic too, and it's interesting to talk to her from the intellectual point. And we were kind of talking about how like it's hard when big developers come in and like dangle money and say, oh, like, I'm going to buy your land and then I'm going to create jobs and I'm going to make your life better. And it's hard for people to think about like long term, like what that's going to mean. Like you coming from these communities, like what are people like? Are people aware of kind of the negatives and the positives? Like when you're talking about like a community meeting of just like ticos in their community.
I used to live in different countries of Latin America. I used to live in Honduras. I've always gone to gringo schools, so I have the gringo mindset. So it's complicated. It's not easy because we need the jobs. And without the jobs, I'd probably be living like I used to live back when I moved to Tamarindo, when during low season, not a single person walked down the beach, and it was basically whatever we were able to forage, to fish, and to, now we can have a micro economy. Look, the change is that we become our own heroes. Like I said before, if I'm here and I'm just preaching to social media and making posts and complaining and ranting, and we need to become leaders, we need to become politicians, we need to become involved in those spaces that generate change. And when I said that I've lived in different Latin American and that I also have the gringo mindset, is I remember when we lived in Honduras, it was so dangerous that you, as a woman, you were not allowed to leave your house. We couldn't go on public buses. There was a time of the year that the government came with the idea that if they did a bus just for women, and what they ended up was doing an easier target. If you have not been outside Costa Rica and see what socialism and communism do and what a corrupt government does, you have not understood history at all. And the one reason why we were so successful is we didn't invest our money in army, and we invested it in education and in health. That is gone. That is gone. We don't need an army. It's just the corrupt politicians are taking everything and they're not investing in education. They're not investing in health. People are just stealing everything. So if you want to see the change, you have to become the change. I was a ex-national surfer for the Costa Rican surfing team. My kid was also. Now, motherfuckers voted me to be the auditor of the Costa Rican Surfing Federation. Now they voted me into the job that holds everybody accountable. It's a shit show. It's a nightmare because I've become hated amongst the ones that maybe should be making a decision if that's the right place they belong, and loved by others that finally want some change in the surfing federation. This is a battle I chose. I'm like, I can't keep ranting on social media and complaining about my kid and the national team. I'm going to become part of the solution, and I ran for the board of the surfing federation. There was a time that I'm not saying that I know everything. I didn't pursue it the full way, but it's running for government. There's where the change is. And unfortunately, for us in Costa Rica, it's very complicated because our municipalities are hours away from where we live. Let's say in Pavones, you want to meet with governmental, you need to drive all the way to Punta Centro, dude. That's like 4 or 5 hours. It requires a lot of conviction and a lot of determination to want to be part of the change. And then what happens? Pura vida, and nothing gets done, and all of a sudden, I never went. So what's happening with the families in Pavones is because of being too nice to never get your paperwork in order and not having the malicia, the thinking that somebody's gonna buy you and that a corrupt politician is gonna have finally the balls to demolish your house, because there are some people that do not have legal title over those lands. However, that doesn't mean they don't have a right to those lands. But for this, it requires money. And then this is where I see the beautiful alliance of having wealthy expats in town. Hey, I need lawyer money, help me out. And so I've always seen this super generous face of expats in my country, like Nosara. Why is the reason that the beachfront hasn't been sold out? Because it's in hands of expats that run the um, city council. And so it's not the fault of our expats. It's the fault of us, the people, that we're selling ourselves. But how can you tell somebody that has 5,000 hectares of land when the money to buy a car so that they can go all the way to Punta Arenas to where the doctor is because they're living in Pavones, because it's expensive. It's a nightmare. We don't have public transportation. We don't have services. There's so much to be done. And at the end of the day, it will only happen when we ourselves become involved.
Yeah, I like very selfishly, I like what you said about the benefit of the expat, because I think that a lot of times, like I said, I go back and forth between like, I'm part of the problem and I need to recognize that. But also, since I'm part of the problem and I recognize that, then I have to be able to like use my resources for good. And so like it feels good, thank you for like validating that. And I think that it goes back to what you were saying is like, if you're going to come here, don't be an asshole. Like if you're going to come to Costa Rica and want to invest, then you're investing in not just your own little property, but not to just like be in your own property and only be friends with other expats. If you want to enjoy this place as it is, then you have to put the energy into making sure that it stays as it is as long as possible. Obviously change comes, development happens, no matter where you're talking about in the world, it's going to change, but that you can make your effort to make it change as slowly or as like healthily as possible. And then if you're a Tico, then it's important because the gringo is not going to go do anything at the municipality. Like I have to use my money to facilitate the locals to be able to make that change, whether it's through education or like in the case of Pavones, there's a GoFundMe that's raising money for the legal fight, and that's a good place like to put money. Yes, or what do you think?
And at the end of the day, it comes down to education. So if we could just open the conversation, educate people, educate the developer. Hey, you cannot be so dumb that you think that what you developed in California is what's going to sell in Costa Rica.
Well, in the case of Pavones, isn't it a Costa Rican that's doing the development? He's like the ex-minister of tourism or something.
Oh yeah, exactly. Look, it's crazy because he's the culprit in almost everything that is happening. So I do not know how truthful this is.
And
But do you know the owners of that developer? Because they blame that one developer that's already there in Pavones.
no, I don't know. I just read the Surfer magazine article. I don't know. According to Tara, which who knows, but she said that it's that Enjoy Hotels, I think is the name of the brand, and that the guy is the ex-minister of tourism, but I don't actually know.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just for me, it's like he's mentioned in absolutely everything. From my understanding, the developers from across the river mouth that already have apartments with the swimming pool, you know them? Do you know them personally?
No. I mean, I know I've seen the condos, but I've never done business with them, so I don't know who they are.
When you go into their website, you see the information there.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, look, no foreigner is allowed to own a concession. I think they have to have a Costa Rican. So
Okay.
it's us doing this to ourselves. But like I said, if you're telling somebody, that is rich in land, that he needs to feed his kids, he's going to sell his land. His land doesn't make sense if he cannot provide for his family.
Right.
So it's a very complex. These are one of my questions I always do to Tana. Okay, you study so much. What are the solutions?
Yeah. Right.
What are the solutions? How can I bring it to people? Because you probably reached out to me after I made my rant. I had other people like attacking me, like, "Oh, I don't want to be a surf city," blah 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 blah. And it's like, we cannot be so radical in our thinking that we generalize. We can't. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing 2 billion invested in Jaco for a surf city and brings the limelight back to Costa Rica and provides, how much freaking jobs it's generating having a city, two ISAs, and everything else. It's like, so we need to eat, but let's find a balance how our ancestors who inherited our land decided, hey, we're not talking the 50 meters land. That's why the law exists. Why are people fencing this? Why are people allowing chairs and benches on the zona marítimo terrestre? It's like the law is there, clear. Let's just apply it and let's stop being corrupt.
Yep. Yep. That's it. And I think that no matter what happens, it's important that the locals have a say in what's happening. Like that seems like the most important thing. But like you said, it's hard because then there's an educational factor and they're going to have difference of opinions. There's going to be some people that are like, yeah, Surf City, it's fine. It's great. It's going to be jobs. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be fun. And other people are like, no, I don't. I just want to be a fisherman and not deal with surfers. That's why it's so important for everybody to like work together, because the more different opinions, then it's harder for those. Then the developers are like, oh, you guys can't decide. All right, we're going to tell you what we're going to do, and we're going to privatize the point, and we're going to do a bunch of condos, and that's it. So it's such a complicated discussion, and I think that it can be easy to feel really like powerless. And even smart, powerful, independent women can find themselves in a situation where they have no power.
Yep.
And it's, I guess, the only thing that I can say from what I'm hearing from you is that if you're a foreigner and you're coming, then come with good intentions and support the local people, local causes, local business owners. If you're going to bring a business, do it legally to not compete with people who are trying to do it legally, because it's really expensive. And if you're a local person, then it's really important that you speak up and have your voice heard. Did I get it?
Yep. 100%. 100%. And shoot back to what like I said, what we inherited: education, health, and empowering each other regardless of where they're from. Because back in the day, I don't know if you know this, but you've been to our Caribbean side where it's all Jamaican and bueno, Jamaican Americans were not allowed to come into San Jose. Yeah, they need up to like mid 70s in order to Jose. So people will always be migrating and people will always be moving. We just need to be good ambassador of our land, because building a 10 golf courses in Guanacaste, like this is something developers don't tell you. When you buy your $3 million beachfront house in Tamarindo, that you need to buy water the whole summer because there's not enough water. So and then you're probably gonna want to run a Airbnb and rent it, and then they expect the help not to make it on time because there's no public transportation. And things, so it's like it doesn't make sense, what we're selling for with where we are and where we should be is doesn't make sense. We need to find that balance and be good ambassadors of our land. What's happening with Hermosa, with the big proyecto, that they're refilling the water, the humedales, the wetlands. For me, this is all going to change the sandbar.
Yeah. And the first big hurricane's gonna flood all that stuff anyways.
And then, oh my God, we got flooded. Dude, you built on a wetland.
Yeah.
And this happens, and it's sad. It's sad to see what's happening, and we're not as smart as we look.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, both your personal story and also your experience with the business and as a Costa Rican woman. And it's I feel inspired, like, honestly. And thank you for pushing me and being honest, because it's like, in one hand, it's like sisters, it's like you want to support each other and lift each other up, but you got to call each other out on your shit sometimes too.
Yep. So like I said, to keep the conversation on the other side, I think you can truly, honestly empower women. That's what surfing did for our lives, and what's the legacy we're leaving behind, with our communities. Super important.